Welcome, everybody. We'll do a brief round of introductions. Just say your name and if you're a voting member and your affiliation. I'll start. I'm Lindsay White. I'm the BWIC chair, executive director of the Missisquoi Basin Association. I am a voting member, and I will call on folks. So, Sarah, go ahead.
Sarah Downs, Enosburg, voting member.
Heidi.
Heidi Bridge Valenta with the Village of Swanton, voting member for NRPC.
Kent.
Kent Henderson, vice chair, voting member, chair of the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain.
Dan.
Julie, representing Richford, voting member.
Rob.
Rob Evans, president of Franklin Watershed and vice president of Lake Carmi Campers Association, not a member or not a voting member.
Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie with the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District. Today, I'm just offering a little update on one of the projects we're working on.
Josh.
Josh Serpy, project manager, Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, non-voting member.
Pete.
Pete Benevento, I'm with the Lake Carmi Campus Association and vice president of the Franklin Watershed Committee.
Lauren.
Lauren Weston. Sorry, I'm late. I spilled coffee everywhere. Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District Manager, voting member.
Alaire.
Hi, Alaire Diamond from Montland Trust, voting member.
Ava.
Hello, Ava Walsh, Franklin Watershed Committee, non-voting member.
Sadie.
Hi, Sadie Priest, AmeriCorps member at Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District, non-voting member.
Beth.
Good morning, Beth Torpy, NVDA. I'm a voting member.
Bridget says she's staying off camera. We're happy to see you joining us, Bridget. And Dean.
Dean Pierce, staff, not a voting member. And if you will bear with me just 1 second, I want to confirm that things are being recorded. So just give me a second. Okay, looks like things are good. Thank you.
Great. Just a quick reminder about our meeting protocols. Thanks for everybody for identifying yourselves as voting or non-voting. That just makes it easy to know. We do have, in fact, have a quorum. Thanks, Dean, for confirming that before we started. Please stay engaged and focused. If you have a question, use the raise hand function, type it in the chat, or otherwise indicate that you have something to add to the discussion. We do ask that folks stay muted during the discussion just to keep background chatter to a minimum. So we're just going to roll right into any standing item of any conflict of interest declarations. Don't anticipate any today, but please speak up if you feel you have any. And then we'll look at the agenda and note any adjustments necessary. And if not, we'll approve it. Anyone note any adjustments? Hearing none, I'd seek a motion to approve. See a motion from Sarah.
This is Lauren. I'll second.
Thank you, Lauren. All in favor, please indicate by either raising your hand physically, virtually, however you choose to. I will call out the names. I see Lindsay, Sarah, Heidi, Kent, Dan, Lauren, Alaire, Beth. So that motion passes. Well, I guess I'll ask for any abstentions or any nays. Motion passes. Moving on, approving the agenda. Any public comment on items that are not already on the agenda? Hearing none. Oh,
Did
I
we
missed.
get-
I totally skipped over approving the minutes. Thanks, Dean. Phew. As usual, the meeting packet contained the minutes well written from our last meeting. Hopefully folks got a chance to look over them. If you have any questions or any corrections you want to note, please declare them now. If none, seek a motion to approve those minutes. I see a motion from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Is there a second?
This is Lauren. I second.
Thank you, Lauren. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from our February meeting. All in favor, please indicate. I've got Lindsay, Sarah, Heidi, Kent, Dan, Alaire, Beth. Is that everybody? Anyone? Any nays? Okay, motion passes. Now I got to scroll back to my agenda. Now on to public comment. In case you were confused by my jumping ahead in agenda items and had any public comments you wanted to share, please speak up right now. Hearing none. We've got seating of members or alternates, biennial renewal.
So no budget adjustments. So if we're talking about seating of new representatives, there are no new reps to be seated or alternates at this time. However, I did want to mention we have full attendance with the exception of Ted or his backup Sarah from Orleans, and they both have the same conflict, or they both have a conflict, which is just pointing to me that something we may want to take care of is finding people a second alternate for that position in the conservation district realm. Something to look forward to, but that is not a focus of the meeting today. The biennial renewal of membership was something that I needed to address in the packets. There's some material about this. This is an informational item. No actions are going to be required. For anyone who is not aware, when someone is a member or an alternate on the Basin Council, they're appointed to what amounts to a 2-year term. And if someone leaves the council, then there's a replacement. The vacancy is filled for the remainder, even if we're not explicit about it. This is something that flows down to us from the DEC guidance concerning the work of the BWIC and the QUISPs. That same guidance also says that every 2 years, there's this renewal process. And more than 3 months before the start of the new fiscal year, we assess who's interested in staying in their seat, if there are vacancies, and then we share that information with DEC. And so after this meeting, I'm going to be providing that update to Chris Rotler of DEC. And we also make sure that any updating of the website that needs to happen happens. As far as the status of current members, this is a sheet that I prepared a couple of days ago. And it does seem that we're fortunate to have everyone wishing to renew. The questions sort of concerning the municipal reps. Abby Miller is on a medical leave, I believe, for another month or so. But when I inquired with John DeSaro, the village manager, his indication was that she would want to stay on. So I'm listing Abby as wishing to renew. The one position where there's a question is the seat that Dave Allerton has filled. Part of the town of St. Albans is in the Missisquoi Basin. Dave has been an alternate rep. He has retired, but he continued to work for St. Albans Town, which meant he could remain as a rep. And I haven't gotten a response from the town whether or not they would continue to support Dave serving in that role, or if there's anyone else, or if there is no one else, then we would be trying to fill that spot. Any questions so far? I had a couple more things to say. And if not,
I have just a quick,
oh,
not
sure.
really a question, but I don't see Tucker Malone's name on here as an alternate for land conservation organization. So you could add him.
Okay. And that could be that he didn't respond to the form, and
Okay.
that's what triggered it. Okay. And this is a report from the forum.
Oh,
So
okay.
Tucker, if we assume Tucker would be staying, then that's an alternate.
Yeah, he would be.
Thank you, Alaire, for clearing that. I see Kent's hand.
Yeah, I've got a question. Did we discuss at any time alternating the times of the terms? And what I'm thinking is, we all started at the same time. Are you expecting us all to re-up every 2 years, the entire board? Or did we discuss at one time of breaking it up to, avoid having a big influx of new board members?
And I don't believe we have discussed staggering terms. It's possible, but I don't remember it. And what I would say is that I think we could probably make it work. It doesn't square exactly with what the DEC guidance says. The DEC guidance is essentially saying there's a takeoff point and then it goes on these 2-year cycles. But if the group felt like there would be some advantage to doing that, we could investigate it.
I don't bring it up because I have a burning desire to set up the staggered term, but I was just curious from your standpoint, managing the quiz, or if there had been discussion from above about the topic. But I just bringing it up for discussion.
Yeah, I think that due to the fact that everyone who replaces someone else is considered to be filling only to the end of that 2-year cycle, that it's kind of a pain to have to do it every 2 years. And we have suggested to DEC that they maybe get more flexible, and there could be a change in that way. I think for now, the status quo is probably the easiest thing. It's just, I think, important for anybody who serves on the council to realize that we don't slap a pair of handcuffs on you. And if you need to depart from the council, then we wish you well when you depart, and we would find someone else, hopefully someone who can move up from an alternate spot or something like that. Yeah. So I would just as soon entertain the candidacy of someone who's really interested and really keen, but they say they can only do it for a year, than have it be vacant because somehow we are looking for a longer commitment. I just don't feel like we can do that. So I'm happy, long-winded answer to saying I'm happy enough with the status quo. If there weren't any other conditions or questions, I wanted to just throw out a couple of things that haven't been mentioned for a while. There is language in the guidance about qualifications. So like, who should be considered to serve on a council? And the language I've got on the slide here is drawn from the official documents. Really, the qualifications are someone knowledgeable on clean water topics relative to the basin, and that you're someone who would be acting in good faith when they're doing their work on the council. And then there's this line about conducting professionally, respecting the rights of others, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, this is just a quick refresher so we can say that we've shared it with you. Moving a little bit in terms of subject. There are continuing to be vacancies to the regional planning commission spots. I don't want to ignore that. And according to the guidance, the regional planning commissions with territory in the basin are to coordinate on the identifying eligible candidates, and it's really between NVDA and Northwest RPC to come up with those. And we are looking to renew efforts to find alternates for those regional planning commission spots. Because of the actual or perceived conflicts of interest, there is guidance that specifically addresses that. So a BWIC member I could not be a BWIC member because I staff the QUISP and support the Basin Council. However, the guidance says another RPC staffer, let's say a transportation planner or someone, but who's got an interest in water, who does not staff the Basin Council or the QUISP, they could be. I'm not saying that that's in the works at all, but I just wanted to make people aware of the fact that another QUISP staff, another Regional Planning Commission staff person could be a member. They just can't be someone who's involved with supporting the QUISP or the Basin Council. So that's pretty much what I was hoping to cover there. Are there any other questions? If not,
Dean, I just wanted to confirm though that the alternates don't get paid, right? It's a volunteer, and that might be an issue for some people.
The Northwest Regional Planning Commission, as the administrator of the Basin Council, has decided that we will reimburse the time of an alternate who's filling in and thus is counting during a meeting. So we will. So if someone says, well, I'd want my time covered to be an alternate, if they attend the meeting and they are counting for a vote, their time would be compensated.
Okay. Oh, but only if they're counting for a vote.
That's the way it is right now.
Okay.
Right. But their attendance would be most critical when they're required for a vote.
Yeah. Well, so it still all comes out in the wash anyhow.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. And I think we are now at a point where we can be moving on to our next agenda item.
Great. Yeah, and thank you to Pete and to Rob and Ava for being here. I look forward to hearing this.
Okay, this is Pete Benevento. I'm the president of the Lake Carmi Campers Association and vice president of the Franklin Watershed Committee. And with me here today, Rob Evans. Rob is the president of the Franklin Watershed Committee and the vice president of the Lake Carmi Campers Association. So we're both heavily involved with activity at the lake. And Ava Walsh, who's the coordinator of the Franklin Watershed Committee, is with us also today, and she'll be queuing up the slides for the PowerPoint presentation. And Ava has been with us since August, September of last year, and I'm sure she has introduced herself to you all, and she works on behalf of the Franklin Watershed Committee and is out there spearheading projects for us to improve our watershed. And hopefully she will be working with you for some time to come. So, all right, and here we have the opening slide. Ava, were you able to get a map of the lake?
Yep, absolutely.
All right, here, I don't know. For those of you who don't know Lake Carmi, we are a 1,402 acre lake in Franklin County in northwestern Vermont. We're 3 miles from the Canadian border, maybe even closer by way of the crow flies. Again, we're 1,402 acres with a watershed of 7,700 acres, which is outlined well, no, this does not have the outline on it, but which surrounds the lake. And as you can see from this map that we have many tributaries that entered the lake, which we have been monitoring for years, and which we will talk about a little bit later on. We also have the largest state park in the state at our southeast corner, and we have worked with them, especially during the alum treatment. But they have a huge presence on the lake, and are a big part of what we tried to do. So next slide. All right, this is a picture of what we've been dealing with for the past. I can remember the first blue-green algae bloom that I experienced was 2006. And over the past, since then, it's gotten worse, and especially in the last 10 years. It's not only unsightly, but the smell, which we really can't impart to you from the slides, is also something that's not very pleasant. This is the reason why we have gone through the aeration project, which ultimately led us to the alum treatment last fall. So, next slide. All right. Lake Carmi has experienced high phosphorus concentrations that resulted in the water quality problems for several decades. The cyanobacteria blooms are the most prominent in the summer when the temperatures are high. In the last couple of years, the blooms have started as early as early July, and then really hit their peak in August and September. The monitoring and management efforts that have implemented to try and track and reduce the blooms have been the tributary water sampling, lay monitoring, the aeration system, and a buoy monitor. The tributary water sampling that we've done has been ongoing since 2008. What we've tried to do is identify sources of phosphorus from entering the lake over that period of time, since that period of time. And as a result, there have been several meaningful projects that have been executed in the watershed to try and help reduce the phosphorus flow to the lake. The lay monitoring that's been ongoing on the lake has actually been ongoing since 1979. I have been doing it for the past 15 years, and that involves actually taking samples from the lake at various depths for measuring for phosphorus and also chlorophyll A. That all led to our lake in crisis designation, which originally happened in 2019. This lake in crisis designation brought about some funding to the lake that allowed us to put the buoy monitor on the lake. I don't know if anyone has been at the lake in the last 4 or 5 years, but there's a buoy monitor that's dead center in the middle of the lake that takes a variety of parameters at different depths. And this information has helped us greatly in not only measuring the function of the aeration system, but also provided data that led us to and helped us with the alum, getting approved to the alum treatment. Okay, next slide, Ava. All right, just a little more on the tributary sampling. Again, we began in 2008, and in 2025, we sampled all the tributaries April to mid-August. When we initially started sampling the tributaries, we only did it in the summer, but about 10 years ago, we started doing spring sampling in April in order to catch the runoff from the winter, and this has given us some very meaningful data. As you see, the total phosphorus content was 70 units per million, and the average dissolved phosphorus was 50.23 units per million. And which is considerably high, and which is normal for a eutrophic lake. We are a eutrophic lake. We are nutrient enriched. All of the tributaries had the highest phosphorus content in the late summer, and the Marsh Brook consistently has had the highest phosphorus content in 2025 and in previous sampling years as well. All right, next slide, please. All right, the possible solutions. In 2019, we executed an aeration system on the lake in conjunction with the Agency of Natural Resources and funding received from the state. The aeration system involved 80 different diffusers, separate diffusers that were positioned throughout the lake in 2 arrays. Each array had 40 diffusers, both in the north part of the lake and the south part of the lake. And the diffusers were powered by 2 compressors rather, one at the northern end of the lake and one at the southern end of the lake. And when it was operating properly, the aeration system did provide sufficient oxygen at the bottom of the lake to suppress the algae blooms. And this was its intent. The idea was if we provided oxygen at the bottom of the lake, that would prevent phosphorus from releasing into the water column and causing the algae blooms. However, due to a number of different reasons and operational problems, the aeration system never really achieved its goal. In fact, some say that it contributed to the algae blooms because during the operation of and period of the aeration system, we continued to experience significant algae blooms at Lake Carmi. Next slide. All right, so mitigation and solutions. We had a TMDL, a total maximum daily load document that was executed by the EPA, which basically is a phosphorus reduction plan. We've had a TMDL on Lake Carmi since 2008, and its objective was to reduce the phosphorus content into the lake to 22 parts per billion. That's what felt the lake had to be at in order to not experience algae blooms. Again, this was in effect since 2008. However, we really never came close to 22 parts per billion of phosphorus in the lake to prevent the algae blooms. But what the TMDL did do is it opened us up to and qualified us for significant grants, monetary grants, that allowed us to participate with Vermont DEC in the Lakewise and Streamwise program. It also funded for a time period, it funded our watershed coordinator position. The boat greeter program, it allows us to get grants for the boat greeter program to prevent the spread of invasive species. It also provided some money for private roads and to do studies of private roads in order to improve their stormwater drainage and prevent its harmful impact on the lake. It also enabled us to work with several different agencies and allowed us to identify, allowed us to do stream walks of all the major tributaries to identify any potential problems. And it also led to grants that allowed us to work with other organizations to do things like install drip line infiltration trenches and water bars and permeable pavers at camps throughout the lake. Next slide. Okay, I talked about the 2008 TMDL, but then after a series of really bad blooms in 2016 and 2017, the legislature passed a Lake Carmi Crisis Response Plan, which designated the Lake Carmi a lake in crisis, and which opened up additional funding for us. And the Lake Carmi Crisis Response Plan also was the main funding mechanism for a UVM lake monitoring buoy on Lake Carmi. And it also provided the funding for our aeration project. Next slide. All right. After it was determined that the aeration project was not going to help us, we requested, and the state agreed that the next step would be the potential alum treatment. But before that alum treatment could ever come into being, we had to have an alum feasibility study. And this alum feasibility study was actually, it's not 2024. I went back and I found that it was actually done in the fall of 2023. And basically, it was done by a company called Bar Engineering out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And what they basically did was they went to the center of the lake, or went to various sections of the lake, and took core samples, which you see to the right. They put a mechanism, a plug that went down into the bottom of the lake, and took multiple core samples. We only have 6 shown here in the slide, but there were, I believe, more than 30 to 40 core samples taken by Bar Engineering during the beginning stages of this feasibility study. And basically those core samples were analyzed, and from the data that they were able to derive from those core samples, they identified that the main problem that we were experiencing that was causing the algae blooms was the, quote, legacy phosphorus in the lake that had been present for many years. That was the result of decades and decades of sediment coming into the lake. So this was basically what led us to the basis of determining that an alum treatment was necessary for the lake. Rob, did you want to add anything on the feasibility study?
No, Pete, other than there were a number of different options that I think were explored with that. Aeration was one of them, continuing with an enhanced aeration, dredging, and some other things. I think even hydrogen peroxide was an option that could potentially be used, but alum was obviously the one that they thought that would be the most likely for success.
Okay. All right. Alum, or aluminum phosphate, or aluminum sulfate, binds with legacy phosphorus, creating a substance called floc that settles in the lake bed, preventing re-entry into the water column, and thus preventing excessive cyanobacteria blooms. Basically, what the alum does, it puts a blanket over the phosphorus, seals it at the bottom of the lake, preventing it from entering the water column and causing the algae blooms. After several research studies, it was decided that internal pea loading control is the most cost-effective method to reduce cyanobacteria blooms on Lake Carmi. And as Rob said, hydrogen peroxide and dredging were both considered, but ultimately ruled out due to cost. Continued watershed maintenance will extend the life of the alum treatment. The life expectancy of the alum treatment, and we hope this is true at Lake Carmi, is that it lasts 10 to 30 years. And then at the bottom is the recommended alum dose for the 775 acres of the lake that was treated. Okay, next slide, Ava. All right, before we could get to the alum treatment, we had to go to a permitting process, permitting and funding process. And that's why it took a year for us to get to the alum treatment. We had the feasibility study conducted in the fall of 2023, but then we had to secure the funding and the permitting in order to actually have the alum treatment take place. And that all occurred in 2024. We were able to secure the funding both through the Clean Water Fund and through the State Revolving Loan Fund. Those were the 2 mechanisms that we used to pay for the alum treatment. And once we had those pieces in place, then we began the permitting process. The permitting process began in the fall of 2024. In December of 2024, we sent out over 300 letters to all of the people that were adjoining Lake Carmi to let them know that we were intending to treat the lake with alum. We also had, during that process, we also had 3 public meetings. It started in August of 2024 at the LCCA annual meeting. We had another public meeting in December of 2024. And then the last public meeting was in May of 2025. And we also had a month of public comment period, June to July of 2025, during the course of the permitting process. Now, the permitting process involved work with a number of different agencies, and you can see their logos at the bottom of this slide. For example, the Fish and Wildlife. We met with the fisheries biologists of the Department of Fish and Wildlife, who were very concerned with the pH levels in the lake and the impact of the alum on the pH levels of the lake. Their conclusion was that the pH levels could not go below 7.2. And for that reason, that had a direct impact, a big impact on how we applied the alum. And we really had to thank all of those partners that were involved in this permitting process, because the timing of this was key. We had to get the permit done by the spring, no later than June, July of 2025, in order to have a timely alum treatment in the fall of 2025. The alum had to be applied before November, because it was feared that if the temperature dropped, that would have an impact on the effectiveness of the alum. So everything had to fall into place for us to have this alum treatment in September, October. And I got to thank the people from the various agencies in the government and Bar Engineering. I mean, there were other priorities, especially for the people in the Department of Environmental Conservation. And we met with them originally. Early on in the process, we met monthly, and then we met every 2 weeks, and sometimes weekly, up until the time of the alum treatment, to make sure that all of the pieces were in place. And there were many, many pieces that had to be put in place in order for this to be a successful project. Next slide. Okay. When we finally had the approval for the alum, we were fortunate that it was done again in such a timely manner that we were able to do the treatment in September and October of 2025. 5 tanker trucks brought alum and sodium aluminum luminate to Lake Carmi. It was dispersed via barge, and the mixture was placed a meter below the surface. This process was repeated 3 times. 7 distinct zones of the lake received varying alum concentrations and delivery requirements. One of the concerns when performing the treatment, as I mentioned before, was that it would affect the pH of the lake. To mitigate this, the alum was mixed with a sodium luminate. It was also the reason why this process was repeated 3 times. And if you look over to your right, you see a picture of the barge that actually dispersed the alum into the lake. You see the tower of the control tower of the barge, and then in front of it are the two tanks, one with aluminum and the other with aluminum sulfate. And then you see the arms extending out of either side that have little hoses that disperse the alum just beneath the surface into the lake. All right. To the right is a map of the lake, and these were the treatment zones for the alum. There were 7 different treatment zones, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And each treatment zone was visited 3 separate times by the barge, so to prevent what they feared would be the pH level of the lake going below the 7.2 mark. So the dosage was critical in terms of getting the permit for the alum treatment and in making this a safe application for the fish and the other aquatic life in the lake. So each of those zones, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, again, they were all visited 3 times for a total of 21 days. So the barge with the alum was deploying the alum from early morning until dusk for 21 almost consecutive days. There was one day, there was one break in the treatment because of the weather. But otherwise, it was 21 consecutive days that the alum was delivered to the lake. And it was delivered to the deeper portions of the lake that were 20 feet and deeper. And over on the left, you can see the columns with the date, the treatment zone, the treatment area in acres, the gallons of alum that were deployed, and the gallons of sodium aluminate that were deployed. And at the bottom, you can see that there were 254,000 gallons of alum placed in the lake, as well as 206,106 gallons of sodium aluminate. Tremendous amount of product that was delivered to Lake Carmi to suppress the algae blooms. Next slide. All right, these are pictures of the equipment that was used throughout the alum treatment. On the upper right-hand corner, you see the tanker trucks that were delivering the alum to the lake. And during the course of the permitting process, we had to get a special use permit from the Department of Parks because, number one, we staged everything at the Department of Parks with the Department of Parks at Lake Carmi State Park. This was all done at from the Lake Carmi State Park public boat launch. I don't know if any of you have been there. I don't know if these pictures look familiar to you, but the park was closed so that no boats were allowed to launch from the site. And we basically took over the entire parking lot of the North Shore boat launch. You can see the delivery trucks that came. And then again, as part of this special use permit, the state park was very concerned with what we were going to do to the roads of the state park because of the weight of the trucks coming down the state park roads, delivering the aluminum and the aluminum sulfate. And the tanker trucks could not exceed 80,000 tons. And fortunately, there was no damage done to any of the roads. This was a great concern that was raised during the permitting process. But we were very fortunate that no damage throughout the entire alum treatment was caused to Lake Carmi State Park. To the left of the picture, to the left of the tanker truck are the storage units where the alum and the aluminum sulfate was stored. And again, these are sitting directly in the parking lot of the public boat launch. And then down below are the pumps. Those are the pumps that we use to pump the product into the barge, which again, you can see at the lower right-hand corner of the slide. Next slide. All right. Now going forward, after we concluded the alum treatment in conjunction with Bar Engineering and Endyme, which is located in Burlington, they test our samples. We will continue rigorous water quality testing to ensure that the alum treatment is not negatively affecting the lake ecosystem. We did this for 6 or 7 weeks directly after the alum treatment, and we will continue to do it this year monthly until the fall. And I should also note that during the alum treatment from the barge, daily water samples were taken both at the surface and at deep depths, almost at the bottom of the lake, again, to ensure that those pH levels did not go below 7.2. And we will continue our lay monitoring program to track the results of the treatment long term. And we will work with the community to reduce future phosphorus inputs, including the best management practice and conducting educational events. And we will continue to work with the Conservation District and DEC and the Lake Champlain Basin Program, as well as other organizations in order to do this. Because we feel, both the Franklin Watershed Committee and the Lake Carmi Campers Association, that we can't rest after this alum treatment. If more importantly, we must continue our efforts even more vigorously to do projects in the watershed, because we have to protect this investment that's been made in the lake. So that's going to be our mission going forward. We are trying to identify as many projects as possible in the watershed in order to prevent unwanted sediment and phosphorus from entering the lake. We are also going to continue working with the people that live around the lake to make sure that they're doing whatever they can do to prevent unwanted phosphorus and sediment from entering the lake, mainly by improving the shoreline, making sure that their section in front of their camp is a buffer to preventing any unwanted material from entering the lake, and also to properly, of course, maintaining their septic tanks. And we do that with education. We do that with outreach efforts. Ava, the next slide. Okay. The next slide was intended to be an example of the handout that we have prepared, that we are going to, there we go. This is the handout that we prepared, that we are going to approach each camper at the lake with, again, to make sure that they're doing their share and doing their part to protect the lake. And again, in reference to septic and septic maintenance, the Franklin Watershed Committee for years has been offering rebates to campers to pump out their septic system. So any camper that pumps out their septic system, they are entitled to a $75 rebate from us to encourage them to properly to keep maintaining their septic tanks at proper levels. And also, if anybody at the lake is having a big party with a lot of people, we encourage them to rent porta potties. We also give them a $50 rebate for their rental of the porta potty. So between working with the landowners around the lake, and I must mention that the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District has been a big partner with us in helping us do that, as well as Northwest Regional Planning Commission. They have helped us with the roads. The Conservation District has helped us immensely with working with the farmers in the watershed to do projects at the lake, especially up at the Marsh Brook, which over the years has shown to be one of the largest contributors of phosphorus to the lake. So between working with the landowners around the lake and working with the landowners in the watershed, we hope to preserve this alum treatment that we all feel we were very fortunate to have. We're very appreciative for all the efforts that have been done for us at the lake in order to rid us of these harmful algae blooms. Rob, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, Pete, thanks. And I think a fantastic, slide deck and information that you shared. Just a couple of key things that I wanted to follow up on, just to kind of highlight and echo what Pete had said. One was the collaboration with the town of Franklin. All of the funding and all of the data that needed to be entered to secure a lot of the grant funding that we got. There was a significant impact on the select board and the town clerk's office there. This was not funding that could come through to the watershed or right to the LCCA. It had to come through a government entity, a municipality, and the town of Franklin took that on. So it's not lost on me the amount of personnel hours and impact that this had on the town. To again force talk about collaboration. It's not lost on me as well that the collaborations and the partnerships and the relationships that we have now around the lake were not always that way. It's safe to say, and I think it's very public knowledge, that there were some pretty contentious and toxic conversations that we're having around the lake as we are working our way towards the aeration project, to the lake in crisis, and then into the alum treatment. I don't think that this would have been able to take place if we hadn't made the significant improvement in the relationships that we now have around the lake, from our ag partners into our lakeshore, to our municipality, to everybody that recreates and enjoys Lake Carmi. We really have come together to try to work together to really enhance and improve upon the quality of water and all of the improvements that we have made. And I can't say enough about our state partners as well. There was some real expertise that was brought to the table to make sure that this was going to be done safely and effectively and get as long-term success as we could get from this alum treatment. I really want to thank, everybody from the state partnerships that was involved in this as well. Pete, one of the things I think we missed was the fisheries concern. What's the impact on the fish long term? And Lake Carmi, as with many lakes, still gets annual fishery tests that are done, for size of the fish population. Walleye is certainly one of the big fisheries that come out of Lake Carmi. It's one of the best walleye populations in all of New England. And that certainly is a priority for us to see if there's any, short, medium, or long-term impacts for our walleye population. We'll continue to monitor that as well. But yeah, Pete, I think a great conversation, great presentation there. Open for any questions that folks might have about the process.
Yeah, and I just want to add just a couple of things. Again, I was a little remiss. The town of Franklin was involved in this 100%, and we wouldn't have gotten anywhere without the town of Franklin. Everything went through the town of Franklin. All of the funding, all of the permitting. Lisa Larrabee, the town clerk in Franklin, deserves a lot of thanks for all the time and effort that she put in. In fact, the whole office, what they did for us to get this alum treatment done. So a big thanks. It wouldn't have happened without the town of Franklin and the support by the town select board. And then the other issue with what Rob mentioned with the fisheries. Every fall, there is an electro fishing survey done on Lake Carmi. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, but the Department of Fish and Wildlife has a boat, and they put the boat in the water in the fall at Lake Carmi, and it has probes on the front that shock the water, and the water stuns the fish. And they bring the fish into the boat, they examine the fish, and then they release them. And they've done this every year since I've been at the lake. And there's a report available usually about 18 months after they do the survey. This is how they're going to measure the impact of the alum treatment, if any, on the fish, through this electrofishing survey that's going to be done in the fall. And I'm sure that information is going to be made public, as I would hope, much sooner than the normal reporting system that's in place today. So that's the main course that's going to be followed in measuring any potential impact on fish.
Pete, and I think two things. One is, one of the reasons why the alum treatment was thought to be the best solution for the lake was the work that had been done in the watershed to shut off the majority of the phosphorus that was continuing to flow into our lake. Obviously, if we hadn't turned that spigot off to the point that the alum could be a successful treatment, they wouldn't have allowed us to do that. But it's also critically important, and I know we got a ton of projects that are planned, for the future, that we continue with that work in the watershed. Because one thing that will mitigate some of the potential successes of this is if we had bad things happen in the watershed and that phosphorus continues or enhances or gets bad things happen from getting into our tributaries, and it will lessen the number of years that the alum treatment will be successful. So we need to make sure that we're continuing to prioritize the work in our watershed.
And this is probably, well, it is the biggest alum treatment that's been done so far in the state of Vermont. It was done by a firm called Solitude Lake Management, and they were one of the only firms in the country really that were capable of deploying the alum into such a significant area as Lake Carmi. Again, the lake itself is 1,402 acres, and 775 acres were treated by the alum. So that's over half the lake. So that's quite an area to cover, and they did it in a very effective and efficient manner. Everything was done by computer. All the dosages were metered. All of the distances were mapped with GPS, and this was a very scientific and specific application of alum. And they did it again in 21 days.
Any questions from folks that we can answer?
Well, I would just say very, very impressive to get that going and to get the community behind it, and hope the results turn out this summer that we're all hoping for. Well done. Kudos.
Yeah, and we had a press event at the end of the season, and at the press event, I invited everybody to come back to Lake Carmi to take a swim this summer. So I'm doing the same here. We're finally able to do this. So we're hoping for a much clearer lake this season. So if it's hot in August and you're looking for a place to cool off, come on down to the lake.
Well, thanks again, Pete and Rob and Ava. That was a great presentation. Just a couple notes in the chat in case folks didn't see them. Kent had asked, did the results of the core samples inform the concentration of alum that was delivered during the application? And Rob responded, it did. The total dosage and where the applications were targeted were based on those samples. And then Bridget just wanted to note that she appreciated you sharing about rebuilding relationships. And we're also glad, I'm going to paraphrase, I'm going to steal her statement. We're also glad you're able to turn it around. Thank you for sticking in there through all of the tough times. Go ahead, Alaire.
Yeah, thanks for this presentation. It's really well organized and well done, and also reflecting just like the multiple threads that you've all been following around trying to keep the lake healthy and engage people for many years. So it's like really fun to see it like presented in a cohesive way. So thanks for that. I appreciate it. I am curious like how replicable you see this process. It's obviously very intensive. Do you see it being something that could happen on other scales, like other water bodies? I don't have any particular one in mind, but just curious, like, or moving water, like how could this be a model for other places?
Pete, I can answer that, and then maybe you can chime in. I think it is replicable. I think the data would have to, inform whether, the lake is in the right spot for an alum treatment. Obviously, open-bodied bays or water bodies are not open for that because it has to be a kind of a closed watershed. But I do think that there are potential successes if folks find themselves in, such a terrible situation that we have found ourselves at Lake Carmi. But I think we need to make sure, and at Lake Carmi too, we were focused on the data. We were focused on, it does the science inform where we're going to need to go for an alum application, and that's what we followed with that.
Yeah, and also we were not the first lake in Vermont to have an alum treatment. Alum was first deployed in Vermont back in the late 80s in Lake Maury. And Lake Maury experienced the second alum treatment in 2024. And we were very excited about that because it showed how long the alum lasted in Lake Maury. And that encouraged us to really go forward with this process. And then the other was Tickle Naked Pond in Vermont. They also received an alum treatment, which was successful. So yeah, there's precedent now. So there's a possibility that if there's other lakes out there that are experiencing the same issues, that this could be done again.
Dean?
Just to follow up on Alaire's question, I dropped a couple of links in the chat. One is to a story map and the other is to a report. I kind of wondered whether or not Alaire was alluding to this, or maybe she wasn't aware of it. But these links will take you to some work that's looking at this idea on a much larger scale, that scale being Missisquoi Bay. And long story short, the people that conducted the study looked at various alternatives, including one that would provide treatments to 4 different sectors in Missisquoi Bay on a rotating basis. So anyway, it seemed like a relevant bit of information as a follow-up.
Well, thanks again, folks from the Franklin Watershed Committee, for this presentation and the discussion. And thank you, Heidi, for suggesting it. It was great to hear this report. Our next agenda item are project presentations. We had this on the agenda last meeting and ran out of time. We are at 12:05, and I think we're getting toward the end of the agenda. There's a few sort of business notes you'll need to talk about, right, Dean?
Yeah, there are some things, but I think they would be secondary to the reports that people would be giving on these 3 projects. If there was 10 minutes left, I think that's going to be fine. But I don't want to step on toes of people if they would like to talk about the projects for longer. And there was initially a request for someone to go first, but I don't know if that still holds. Carrie, are you still hoping to get this going?
I'm happy to go whenever. I don't have any time constraint.
Okay.
No.
Well, since we're talking about you, if you have slides to share and you'd like to start rolling, why don't you?
Sounds good. Alrighty, I think you all can see that. Great. Awesome. So yeah, I am providing a little project update on our Montgomery flood resilience project development that we've been doing, and specifically focusing on some of the problem solving aspects of this project. For some background, this project builds off of the projects that were identified during our Montgomery flood resilience study that we did with SLR Consulting. 8 projects were prioritized through flood modeling and participatory outreach with Montgomery residents. And then we applied for this project development phase to further develop those 8 flood resilience projects through landowner outreach, feasibility determinations, and communication with regulators and other stakeholders. The original flood study that was done, there was a lot of really interesting modeling that was done by SLR, and this is just an example of that. They did some models showing the potential impacts of a medium flood, a large flood, and then determine some project areas based on all of that cool engineering modeling. One of the projects that came out of the flood resiliency study is the Black Falls Brook project that is in final design, that was funded through this BWIC. So that's an exciting piece of this project development portion as well. We were able to develop the project a little bit more using these project development funds, and then present it to you all. And then thinking about problem solving through this project, the biggest thing that I've run into is just realizing that landowner outreach can be really tricky. You look on A&R Atlas, and maybe there are some phone numbers or emails that you can look up online, but those are often out of date. I've found that quite a few of the property owners live out of state and there aren't accessible phone numbers or emails. So the only way to reach them would be sending out a mailer, which just feels a little bit more impersonal and hard to really connect with someone that way. And there are also the instances where we do have phone numbers or emails for people, but we just don't hear anything back. And I think part of that has to do with it's hard to establish trust with folks who don't know about the district. And I feel like there's a little bit of discomfort with the idea of the state and people thinking that we are part of the state. So trying to make that clear, definitely starting conversations with we are a non-regulatory organization has been prominent. But kind of a way to address this, and something that's been really helpful, is just local collaboration. And it's been a huge key to the successes that we have had in this project. So we've collaborated with the Montgomery Conservation Commission, as well as trusted community members. And they have been able to kind of point us in the right direction of whether people will be interested in this project right now, which landowners might be willing to hear us out. And then it's been great to have those folks maybe introduce us to the landowners or just start that conversation, because they are the trusted component of this equation. So having the Montgomery Conservation Commission or trusted community members introduce us to the landowners that we're hoping to connect with has been really helpful in just getting a conversation started. And people have said I'm still not sure about this, but let's have the conversation. And I think that's really helpful. So yeah, then lastly, I think we're just kind of making it work where we can, where landowners are interested. So we've had the situation where the project might span 2 properties or more, and we have one landowner who's interested and the other is either unreachable or uninterested. So at this point, again, we're just trying to make projects work where they make sense and where they will still have all of the benefits that we're looking for. And so the town of Montgomery has kind of been a key piece of this. They're really supportive of a lot of the projects that have come out of this. And if there are projects on town-owned land, they've been great at, having the conversation with us. And so, the Black Falls Brook project is on town-owned land. And there's another potential project that we're exploring right now that would be on town-owned land. And we're kind of thinking, if we can establish trust and prove to the community that these initial projects are well developed, well implemented, and effective, then maybe we can have more of a reach with landowners in the future. So yeah, it's definitely been an interesting process, and I definitely feel for my coworkers who have done a lot of project development in the past, and I understand that it's tricky just getting in contact with landowners. So that's been the biggest problem solving that we've been running into for this project. And that's all that I have for you all. It's just kind of a quick update. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't know how to raise my hand, but I don't need to go next. Dean, you can go ahead of me.
Well, no, Chris, go ahead.
Hi, Carrie. This is Chris from DEC. I really enjoyed your presentation. I've been thinking a lot about project development, and really great to hear your perspective as an implementer on the ground doing this work. My question for you is, are there any resources that you think that you wish you had that would help support you as you're doing this work? Yeah, I mean, obviously money, but besides like money, like I'm thinking like flyers or websites or videos, like videos on projects that you could show to a landowner about, like, oh, we did this, we want to do something similar on your land, or if that rings a bell or something like that.
Yeah, definitely like the first thing that comes to mind that I don't think is feasible due to like privacy issues is like, it would be great if there was just a list of like folks's like email addresses or phone numbers. And I feel like, yellow pages used to be a thing and it's not anymore. So that's just tricky. But I definitely do think it is hard to come to a landowner and be talking about floodplain restoration or stream restoration, which seems so intuitive to me, but it isn't self-explanatory, and the components that are involved in that aren't super accessible, especially when you're thinking about like, oh, this involves a lot of big, heavy equipment and excavation. So I do think like videos of previous projects would be really helpful, almost like an example project for each project type. That could be really useful in just having like visuals to go alongside the projects that we're presenting to folks. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. In case it's helpful, I'm thinking about those things and looking for some resources for that.
Cool.
So that's really helpful feedback. Yeah.
I'll jump in. Oh, sorry, Dean.
No, I'll defer to if you had a question, Lindsay.
Nope, I was calling on Lauren because I saw your hand go down, but go for it.
Oh, well, yes, I was maybe premature. Maybe this is opening up a can of worms. The district hosted a listening session on Act 59 recently, and I'm wondering whether you or the district are thinking that the discussions that are taking place around it are going to make work like this harder, easier, or not really have an impact.
Ooh, that's a good question.
At least I see Lauren smiling.
I think Lauren has a lot of thoughts on this topic. My first stab at it would be, I do think I wouldn't be surprised if people are more hesitant to have folks out on their property these days, just because there's so much unknown to people with all these different laws that are going through. And I feel like it feels very intimidating for folks. So people are feeling very protective. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. Yes, somebody asked to briefly explain what Act 59 is. Act 59 is also known as like the 30 by 30 bill. It's all about conserving 30% of Vermont by 2030, and then 50% by 2050. And we hosted a listening session and received feedback from folks, and I feel like there was really good constructive criticism in a way, thinking about all of that. But I think there are some general concerns from everyday people who aren't in the environmental world that are just concerned about what that means for their property, and all that good stuff. Lauren, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think Act 59 is probably less of a threat to these projects than Act 181 is. I think Act 181 has gotten a lot of misinformation spread around, and people are really pissed off at the state right now. And so I'd be surprised if that doesn't negatively impact how we interact with state projects.
And Act 181 is like the updates to Act 250, right?
Yes. I will also just plug, I almost have an almost date for the general public to come and talk about Act 181 in June with some state folks. So that'll be interesting. I think, Bridget, to your question in the chat of how many people came out to our Act 59 event, I believe it was in the 20s.
17 to 20 people, I would say.
Yeah, so not a huge turnout.
But pretty good considering events
that we host, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there have been dozens of Act 59 events. People have shown up to the ones that they could, and it wasn't necessarily the timing that ours was. And just on another note, Chris, in terms of useful resources, that this might not actually be useful necessarily for, it might be useful for landowners. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think hydrology and hydraulics models that engineers do, I actually wonder if there could be some sort of like half-hour overview of like how those models work. Because I think that would really help people understand, especially when it comes to flood resilience, like what we're trying to convey and how we're proving it. I think that could be a really interesting training for folks to have the language to communicate that. I've done something like that for my staff, but I think, an SLR or a Stone could do like a quick, here's how a HECRAS model gets built. Here's why we need ground survey. Here's how we tie into LiDAR. And here's the input flows. And when we talk about a Q50 to a Q100, here's what we're talking about.
That's good feedback. Thanks. We actually have some dam safety engineers in our shop who do H&H modeling, and either a private consultant or maybe I can ask and see if they'd be interested in coming to or doing a presentation, and we could schedule that. Yeah, I'll investigate. Thanks.
Thanks.
Sarah Downs, hands up. But she's muted.
You're on mute, yeah.
I think what Lauren's saying is so critical. Before I got on this committee, I was more into the forest, and I would not have understood any of this unless I had seen the presentation. So I think the general public would think you're presenting bullshit when you come to them, unless you can have something as detailed as some of the presentations here, but it needs to be faster moving, obviously, than the long presentations that I think going out, you have to have something to present, because otherwise people are fearful to have someone do anything else with their land. And as Lauren said, right now, everybody's hackles are up, but you have to show what's in it for them. and visuals in our world are so critical.
Super. Thanks, Carrie. Uh,
Do you want to flip a coin, Lindsay, you and Josh?
Up to you, Josh. Do you want to go next?
I'm happy to go, Lindsay.
Go for it.
Cool. So I am going to share more of a verbal update. I know that we just launched our Swan Hill floodplain reconnection, but it's in the very early stages. We're just in the project planning phase and releasing the RFP for the project. But what I really want to focus on, because the theme is problem solving, I want to talk about what got us to that accepted final design proposal. And that is the work we were doing for project development for our Fairfield Pond Lake Watershed Action Plan. And on the theme of problem solving, we all want to get to these implemented water quality projects. So I think about 5 oversimplified things that, lead to these projects becoming implemented. It's the state of Vermont and regulators, it's watershed groups, NRCDs, towns that are willing to take on the work. It's understanding the natural resource constraints of a site, it's having a willing landowner, and it's funding. So 3 of those things we were able to address through our project development funding, that being addressing the willing landowner, because we had projects from this Lake Watershed Action Plan, but our organization saw turnover the last couple of years, the landowner outreach is lacking. So this funding really gave us the opportunity to go out there and connect with various landowners and really gauge their willingness to the project. And to that point, it allowed us to get out onto those sites, bring on a consultant, understand what those natural resource constraints are with it. And all it comes down to funding. Without that funding, we wouldn't have been able to go back and do that project prioritization. We wouldn't have been able to go back and do that landowner outreach, visit the site, do that regulator outreach, revise the phosphorus crediting, and really rise it to the application stage of being able to get that final design and start moving it through the paces. And needless to say, we have about half of our funding left. We have a couple more projects that we're looking to identify, and I'll just say thank you to DEC for providing this funding pathway for us to, do those in between phases of projects where otherwise they might not have gotten picked up again. That's it. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
I think that was, Dean's coming.
Well, just to give Josh a little bit more time, you mentioned the funding coming for project development. Can you say whether or not it was important to be able to access that funding quickly? How much role does being able to come up with the idea, make a request, and get the funding make?
Sure, yeah, that's a great point, Dean. And I think about like the different funding pathways for project development. We can compare the Basin Water Quality Councils, the Clean Water Service Provider models, to something like WUV or LCBP. With WUV or LCBP, they only come around once a year. So you have to strategically plan to be able to, fit it into your timeline within that given year to be able to go after that funding and have the time in the summer to review projects if that's the way you go, with that being Watershed United Vermont. But, in being able to access the funding very quickly, send out that simplified application, we can sort of do it on that rolling basis where, we have time in our schedule in the fourth quarter. Hey, let's apply for some funding and let's revisit some of these projects. That way we can really line up our future year to be able to roll into those future phases. So yes, Dean, to that point, it's great to be able to have that simplified application process and access these funds at different times of the year.
Well, thank you, Josh. Thanks for actually both you and Carrie made mine really easy. I kind of just want to show you guys pretty pictures because I feel like you've said a lot of the same problem-solving issues I encountered. But I will show pretty pictures and tell the story of Sleeper Pond. And it is, of course, unique in its own way, like they all are. So we removed Sleeper Pond Dam last year. Super exciting. Happened really quick once it got going. Broke ground late August and had it out before the October 1st deadline. But also we started this project in 2017 and it's ongoing this year. So, that's its own type of problem because they do take a lot of landowner outreach. The story of Sleeper Pond Dam started in 2017 when Karen Bates connected me with the landowner who said, "Hey, we want to dredge the pond again. We miss our pond." And it took some careful landowner outreach to say, like, well, it's not going to happen. We got some DEC dollars through the ERP fund to do an alternatives analysis. The most affordable option was removing the dam. To no surprise, it was a breach dam. There wasn't a lot of money available for that. The town select board said, sure, do whatever as long as it doesn't cost us anything. So it languished for a long time. And then there was more funding available for dam removals. And we started seeking some and then realized that our 2018 estimates were woefully lacking. So we found several pieces of money to pull it together. And I'm going to show you some pretty pictures. I'll talk a little bit about more of the details, but if I can advance the slide, just to give you guys a placemaking, this is sort of placemaking, if you know Newport Center, but this is the old impoundment here, and the dam is on the other side of this road, was on the other side of that road. And you think of a dam removal, and you think, okay, we remove the dam. So I like to show this picture because it's a before and after of what I thought the project would be. Here's a dam. Here's a machine taking it out. Here it is post-removal. Done. It was the smallest amount of the project. There's the dam in 2018. There it is in last fall. Not quite when the project was finalized. But then you turn around and you look on the other side of the bridge, and there is the impoundment like it used to look. Not much of a pond, which is what started this project. And there it is now. Again, to say the same thing that Carrie and Josh said, landowner relations were a big part of this. There were two major landowners involved, and then the town owned some land. It ended up being fairly, well, you guys were here for part of it when it became like 13 landowners. So that was having to connect with people that we'd never talked to was hard because this impoundment touches a lot of parcels. Luckily, I guess the conversations all went really well. And just having regular contact, just having funds to free up staff time to just drive out to Newport Center and have a conversation, have tea with someone, just sit on their porch. That cannot be downplayed. The importance of that is really what makes projects go smoothly. Okay. Well, that was, yeah. Apologies. Let me go back if I can get to it. So this impoundment became the huge part of the project. It's most of the ongoing project. You can see we've got some beaver dam analogs and some post-assisted log dam or post-assisted log structures. This was the design project. So this is the impoundment. We've got 5 of them installed. And then I think, there's a close-up of one of the pals. And then here's last November. So, we hadn't even had any significant weather events, but they're already failing. They're probably gone now that we've had spring runoff in the channel. But these are such huge structures that they're still holding the sediment in place. And that was a major thing. It continues to be a landowner outreach because they're confused as to like, okay, these structures are here. Why are they putting them in? Why are they making them 100 feet long? And so we had to tell people this is why. It's because we're leaving so much sediment in there we don't anticipate that this is going to like remake your impoundment, although the beavers may. There are definitely active beavers there. But we really want to make sure this sediment stays in place. And so they do seem to be functioning well, which is awesome. So that was one big conversation that we continue to have over and over again. I will call out this beautiful little cascade that we discovered when we started removing the sediment. The landowner on this side of the river, on the river right, on the left as we're looking at it, was really happy that she will still have the sound of water flowing from her yard, and I'm happy that that worked too. This giant boulder erratic was in there. It's a cool structure, and it's been fun to have the landowners and community members excited about it. I know that there are people who are really angry. Oops, I skipped. These are out of order. Sorry. I'm going to go ahead. There were people really angry about how low the water got, and it was a drought last year. So it'll be interesting to see this year, if we don't have the same drought conditions, what it looks like. But people, this is way upstream of the impoundment where the railroad bridge is, and you can see how low the water is through that impoundment or through that bridge. And so people were, I heard, nobody came directly to us, but I heard that people were upset that the dam was gone and now their stream is dried up. We'll see how that plays out in equilibrium. But nobody came and yelled at our contractors. Nobody came and yelled at me. We got one angry letter in the mail, but it was all in all very positive interactions, and people were pretty supportive. And I do think that's because we went to the town meetings. We made ourselves available. It was really important to just have those conversations. I did want to talk about one aspect of problem solving on the fly. This wall was not part of our original plan. We've got this beautiful bedrock below the wall here, and thought that it would continue because there is bedrock under the bridge abutment as well. But once they removed the dam, it was like, this is not stable enough. So we're able to come and ask for an amendment to our CRISP dollars and find the funding for this wall. There's an apartment building behind this hedgerow, and so we attempted to talk to the folks that live there. We did get permission, obviously, from the landowner, and we are going to plant some vegetation here because a lot of these hedges are dead. But that went shockingly smoothly and quickly within the confines of literally a week to get that project done. I think the angry letter actually came from one of the landowners, but he was not interested in, or sorry, one of the apartment dwellers, but he was not interested in speaking with us directly. And it wasn't about the wall, happily. So all in all, a positive project. Again, because we spent a lot of time and were able to spend a lot of time talking to people. It also was fun to have positive wildlife interactions. So I wanted to end on that note. This heron was a regular visitor. I'm sure gleaning all of the fish that were constrained and frogs and whatnot, but didn't care about the machines at all, would fly right past them. The contractors reported beavers doing similar. I didn't get any photos of that. And then a big surprise part of the project was the turtle relations. We knew that there were snapping turtles, and we had a landowner that was very, very concerned about the snapping turtles. We actually only ended up moving 4 of them. We just moved them upstream of that railroad bridge. But it was a community event every time we spotted one. I got to go splashing around in the mud and catch one, and got a lot of acclaim for that. I guess it's good to just not be afraid of snapping turtles. But then the contractor really got into it too. And that was a really big win too for landowners. They were so happy to be respected by the guys driving the machines because they cared about the turtles. So there were baby turtles as well. And the contractor like found them crossing the road and like cared and was like, oh, we found another baby. And so collected, I think there's 19 in the end, and then released them above one of those post-assisted log structures. Hopefully they managed to find winter habitat and will emerge as residents of the new space, but we'll see this spring. So that was it. I think that's all my slides. Yeah. I just wanted to really talk about landowner relations like everybody else. There's a theme of the day. Dean.
I noticed that you had, I think, a couple at least of articles in the local paper, and I was wondering, did that help? Did you get as much coverage as you wanted? Did you try? Did you just get it because you were in the right place at the right time?
It was pretty much like we didn't really request. We knew that the Courier reporter comes to all the select board meetings, so we knew we were going to talk to Matt. Um, it wasn't like a conscious effort on our part, but it certainly it didn't hurt. I mean, again, like I kept hearing there were people who were upset about the dam removal, but nobody came after us, which I was really happy about. I was fully prepared to like have those conversations. I guess in the design phase, we had an open meeting, and there was one non-resident who got fairly aggressive in his angst about removing these small dams and how he didn't believe in it. And in the public meeting setting, it was uncomfortable. And so I just asked him to stay after, and we had a actually delightful conversation. And, I've seen him since, and, I don't think we've convinced him that we should remove dams, but it was a very easy, clear conversation of like, yeah, I hear you, but that wasn't an option for this dam. And the option that we're pursuing is removal. So again, just having conversations, having lots of time to spend in the communities that we're doing the work in. We can move on to your business stuff, I think, Dean. You want to do updates?
Lauren had her hand up, or was sort of.
Um, you might have touched on this, and I apologize. The site access agreements, I'm wondering how that like went retroactively, effectively. And if you think that could have stopped things if you had done it proactively. Sorry if you talked about this.
Well, I'll somewhat tap Dean for this too, because
I mean, it was different in that it's an easement. Now, you had an easement in the case of a public property owner, which I think a public property owner for some of this property made it easier, but this was requiring easements affecting a lot of private property owners. And if I'm understanding you correctly, yeah, I think the easement discussion, even though it's a site access easement, and that requires a lot of explaining why it's different from other kinds of easements. Yeah, it could have made things harder. We kind of bootstrapped. So, I mean, we learned. I don't know how much Lindsay and her folks learned about the process, but I know I learned a lot in going through it. This is all still very new to us and to DEC, and I think maybe some of their procedures will change. We're now working more with checklists. I think that some of the advice that I would give to organizations doing projects is like, let's, think about this. Is there a way the project can be structured? Not like we're avoiding doing easements, but we want to be absolutely sure that we only do them when we have to do them.
Yeah, and that's my feeling too. That's what it came down to, and I had a lot of angst about. Again, it was retroactive, so yeah, they weren't going to stop the project, but I do think if we had done it ahead of time, because of some of the things that Carrie pointed out, like some of these landowners were hard to get in touch with. They didn't live there. I think we found upon digging that maybe one of them was in jail. Like how would we have done that if we had to have them in order to break ground? We knew going into this project that all of the landowners we needed to be on the property or that who would be directly impacted were in favor of it. We had two major landholders, the town, and then one that we were like, oh, yeah, right. Now we need to build a wall technically on your project. And they were all folks we had conversations with and that we were actively engaged with. And so it was like, all right, cool. We know these folks. It was the 9 or so others that we were like, oh, shoot, we've never talked to those people.
I just want to add for the record that, we rationalized this after the factness by thinking of the project as really, because it has multiple funders, not really kicking in with the QUISP until after the
wall.
agreements.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of like the mindset that we brought to it that made it possible for us to keep going. But the other thing I would say is that easements are certainly worth pursuing, but if a project so one of the property owners went from our lawyer saying they needed to sign an easement to not, because there was a slight redesign. And so in the same way that projects get redesigned because of permitting considerations, it's conceivable to me that a project might get a slight redesign because of an easement consideration. If the QUISP funding is really necessary to make it happen, it just may be, there's a greater gain than a loss to make a slight adjustment.
Yeah, it was a learning experience for me to think about what properties are actually being impacted, and that was one. It was like, oh, then we won't put the end of the Beaver Dam analog on that property. We'll just keep it on the town property. So
just one more question. Did any of the landowners get their own lawyer to review?
not officially. We had one of the major landholders consulted a relative, but nobody brought official legal action in.
And then I guess this is like kind of just more feedback to DEC, but I think like I could see the landowner piece being a deal breaker for a QUISP funded project, but not a like enhancement project because they don't know for those. And just like that would be sad if that's the one deal breaker moving forward.
I agree.
Time to move on, Lindsay?
Yeah.
Okay,
we have updates.
We have 15 minutes left, and I'm going to try to use this time in the best way. The meeting packet referred to some things that I might touch on. I had listed the DEC policies in the last packet and had thought, because that was before the deadline or right around the commenting deadline, it would have made more sense then perhaps than it does now, but I'll just mention also a few words about funding outlook and then talk about the new online tool or page for uploading documents. Just to recap for folks about the DEC policies, you can see a list of them. You can see a list of them here. Sorry, having some weird things going on with my screen. Speaking of, whether or not the fact that QUISP funds are used versus enhancement funds, the proposed revisions to the co-funding policy is somewhat related to that. We have known in the past that there's this idea of when different sources of funding are used, if another source of funding is a reporting entity, then the phosphorus credits would be split, which could make it perhaps less attractive to fund. And things are moving in a direction where QUISP funding would not end up having to split phosphorus credits with another funding source. So that's a positive development, I would say. The definition of regulatory projects, this may seem kind of esoteric, but I'm going to be meeting with Karen Bates a little bit later in the afternoon, because these questions about whether or not an aspect of a project is regulatory and therefore not eligible for QUISP funding comes up all of the time. It could be kind of a hidden landmine. O&M policies regarding herbicide use and invasives management, things are proposed to be getting better. But just yesterday, I was involved in an email exchange with a funded project where there were some questions about just how far could the O&M funding go as related to management of invasives. There are some kind of administrivia things having to do with forms. I don't think I'll get into that any further. Eligibility of wetland easements for project development funds, riffing off what Josh was talking earlier about the importance of project development funding and what others have said about having resources that allow the contact and communications. Previously, project development funds would not direct them to river corridor and wetland easements, but that would be a possibility under this proposed change. So that's good. More formalized use of the screening tool. This is kind of in that form vein. An updating of the historic preservation review form, not changing by very much as near as I can tell. It's adding a little bit of acknowledgement where new project types are allowed. But I think the real issue with the historic preservation review is the question of, can more projects be exempt than are currently exempt? And I know that there was going to be a presentation by someone from historic preservation at a meeting of the QUISP folks, but that was rescheduled. I don't know whether or not we're going to be receiving any positive news on that front, but I know that people have expressed that concern many, many times. If it's okay, and in light of time, I was going to just move on in terms of funding outlook. I had hoped to have something kind of formal about the funding related to clean water service providers. This is a tough year as far as the funding in the legislature is concerned. Things started out well. There was a recommended, I think, something like $50 to $60 million recommendation from the Clean Water Board. The House passed budget supports the board's recommendation, and the budget legislation is now in the Senate. There is one thing, a change that occurred that is helping the situation overall. There was a law. That law had set a restriction on funds coming from the property transfer. It was set to sunset, which meant it was going to end, and then the sunsetting was removed, so those funds can continue to flow, which is basically, in short, a good thing for the clean water funds. I don't know if this is something that's a great interest or concern to most, but I just thought I would say a few words about it. The other thing that I was going to touch on, some of you are already aware of the fact that the Regional Planning Commission, wearing its QUISP hat, has created a couple of tools for the subgrantees to use with their projects. And what we are asking people when we are signing new task awards is to shift over from using the Word document and the Excel tracker to a more web-based system when you are submitting your invoices and providing your reports, and also uploading deliverables. There were some screenshots included in the meeting packet. And I wanted to say, first of all, that these links will be going onto the website. They will always be included on your task award, but we want to have them in a obvious spot on the website. So should you not have it bookmarked, you will be able to find it quickly. We can always email it to you, but you'd be able to find it quickly on the website and then go to the form on your own. I'm going to shift how I am sharing here because I've got a different web browser. And so hopefully everybody can now see a different screen. So essentially we're calling this a prototype form because we recognize there will be tweaks to it. People, to repeat, would use it when they're submitting invoices. It's kind of voluntary if your task award doesn't require it now. But we would certainly encourage you to use it or try it out. Or if you have 3 invoices, maybe you'd want to test it out with one of them. But we will be hoping for everyone to use it going forward in the future. And even if you're just submitting a report, you can use the same form. And just to help people understand what I'm talking about there, you put your name, a lot of the same information that's on the form that we have had you do before. So the date, the name, the organization, the ID, what's the project. We're trying to make things simple so that you'll be able to pick your project from the list. What is the period of time that's covered by your invoices? When did it start? When did it end? It's not always something that people remember to do, and we're hoping that by just making it, okay, this is the start of my period here, and this is the end of it, that we will not have to get back to people to confirm that. And this is where if someone is just submitting a report and they're not going to be submitting an invoice, then they're first of all telling us, are you going to need a budget adjustment? Are you doing any deliverables? Those will probably be no. And you just write down the activities. So as it has been, you use that second page on the form. Here, you'll just put a few notes regarding activities, milestones, deliverables, hit any comments, and then just hit send. So if you're just doing a report, it's simpler. If you are doing an invoice, then you're going to tell it that you're not just doing a report. Oops, sorry, I did that mistake again. And this is where people are going to be using an Excel sheet. You can get to the Excel sheet by clicking. This will look familiar to some of you. So use the Excel sheet. Whoops. Tell us, is this the first invoice? Is this the second? Again, these are things that people are already doing. If your accounting system has a number, put it in. Are you providing everything that we're asking for? You're going to normally say yes. And then this is where you will upload the documentation, something that indicates the hours, something that indicates the travel, something that indicates project expenses, and your consultant invoices. And we are required to continue to have this signature. So you'd be putting your initials in or your name for certifying the accuracy. And you can do deliverables at the same time. And there's a link here that takes you to the separate deliverables form, but you can just keep it simple as well by working with the invoice as the invoice alone and submitting deliverables separately. This is throwing a lot of people. I want to emphasize that we will do one-on-one sessions with folks if they have any questions or difficulties, and that's bound to be the case. The deliverables form, I'll just say for a couple of seconds, is really kind of second best solution. What we are asking people to do is to have your materials ready. You know what you have to upload based on the deliverables page on your task award. But one thing that we're hoping helps folks is that you put your name, you put your date, you put the ID, and then when you put your specific project type, so if it is a if it is a stream buffer project, which I'm trying to find here, then it will tell you the things that you need to provide. So it's giving you the reminder of what you need to provide. And if you're providing everything, great, you can select all. When you're doing only some of them, you can click which thing you're uploading, and then you can be attached and then hit submit. It's preferred that people do as many at the same time as possible, but we recognize that it's going to be incremental at some point. That's what I wanted to say about that. I'm realizing that we're a couple minutes away from the end of our time. So if people want to set up times to go through this, please get in touch with us. And we could then end with what's coming up for the next meeting. There's another funding round. It's going to open up in a couple of weeks. The deadline will be May 20th. That will allow for consideration of applications at the next meeting, which is going to be on June 3rd. So we know that the agenda for that meeting is going to include review of applications, a kind of administrative matter that we will need to just check off is whether or not there needs to be a nominating committee, and if there are other topics that people would like to see, then we will try to get them on.
I'd like to have a longer conversation with folks about Kent's earlier point about trying to stagger terms. I think that's just a good idea.
Okay. Anything else? I know Karen and I both have another meeting come up, and we're not the only ones.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alaire.
Just in planning for the next funding round, Dean, could you share what the available funding is at this point? I'm asking, sorry, you're on mute. I'm asking because I'm planning to submit an application, and because of the timing, it's hard with I want to kind of have some confidence about whether it might get funded. So I'll be reaching out to you specifically about that, but I'm just curious at this point if you can.
Yeah, we have not set aside particular portions of the available funding for any specific funding round. So it's not like there's a cap on that in that way. The QUISP has 4 contract years. We have moved from year 1 to year 2. Year 1 was roughly $1.5 million. The total for all 4 years is going to say something like 9 or 10 million.
Okay.
And really what matters more is just basically the cost effectiveness.
Totally. Yeah. Okay, great. I'll be reaching out to you around that, just trying to get a sense of sort of how to structure the on the ground bidding and things like that if we don't have funding fully committed until June. But I think I could, if it seems like a good project and you and I talk about it, I feel pretty confident.
Okay.
About it, but who knows? Thanks.
Guess we need a motion to adjourn. Got a motion from Alaire. Is there a second?
Lauren, second.
Lauren seconding. Okay, all in favor? Everybody, Lindsay, Kent, Lauren, Beth, Heidi, Alaire. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, team.
Thank you all.